So we're all about helping you make smarter decisions about your money, your career, and your future here on this podcast. We talk about making good choices and where they can lead. And that's because we like to be positive. But let's flip it for a moment. What's the cost of not making the right decisions? What are you risking with inaction? That's this episode of Money and a Good Life. My name is Stephanie Coombs, and as always, I'm here with co-host and money expert Ryan Watson. Hello, Ryan.
Hi, Steph. How are you?
I'm not too shabby, and today we're joined by a true statesman of the financial advice industry, Brad Fox. Brad has been the CEO of the Association of Financial Advisors. He's the chairman of Tribeca Financial, and Brad's a big voice in the field of financial advice. Thanks for coming on, Brad.
Thanks very much, Steph. Statesman worries me a little bit.
It's a good thing. You want to be a statesman. Now, Brad, quite a few of our listeners are actually AFL fans, I found out. So it'd be a bit remiss of me not to talk about this one first. You used to be a professional player, didn't you?
I did. It's a long time ago now, though. Back in 1990, I started and had a few years at Essendon and then a year at Richmond. And then I worked with the Brisbane Lions for 8 years, including their first 3 premierships.
Wow. Okay. So you were pretty good then?
No, actually, I was a lousy footballer, but I was a competitor.
Well, you played about 28 more games than I did in the AFL.
Only 21 wide,
21.
But thanks for being kind. Yeah. No, look, I wouldn't swap it for anything except to go back and be able to do it again with an old head on young shoulders instead of a young head.
Now, you see, the funny thing is when I think about footballers, I don't necessarily think about people who are very good with money. You know, and I'm not saying that's necessarily fair, but you have ended up in the financial advice industry. How did that come about?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I was probably a better student than I was a footballer. I was just lucky. I was given the gifts of a bit of both. And, you know, when my football career was over, I did a couple of different things. I actually did a year in real estate, and then I became the CFO of a family business that went through some pretty tough times, and we got them through the end of that. And I worked in AFL. That was the period with the Brisbane Lions. But along the way, I worked out that I wanted to go in business for myself. And financial advice was the field I found because it combines the two things I love most, people and numbers.
I mean, that's such an interesting career trajectory. And I mean, you've just kind of lived the dream that a lot of kids would have, is that you go and you play footy for a while, you know, you're a professional footy player, and then suddenly you have your own business and you're doing your own stuff. So, like, it's pretty impressive life when you look back over it.
Yeah, it's really easy and sounds like a simple journey when you just say it like
rather,
that. Yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah. But, like, on paper, that's kind of exactly where most kids would sort of love to end up.
I think so. I mean, you know, it's great. I still coach footy now. I'm coaching an adult footy team now, and most of my players are between that sort of 19 and 22, 23 bracket. And you can see that they're wrestling with the dreams of what they want to do in life, the harsh necessities and needing to earn some money, but the work they put into it because they're chasing the dream and still trying to figure out what's next. It's just exciting. It's great being with young guys.
It's also, it's such a tough decision, right? Because, like, you put your body on the line when you're doing football and you've got a few good years, and if you put all your eggs in that basket, you know, you got an injury or something, or you make it big and then you spend it all, which I think is what a few of these blokes do. Like, that's can be not always the most positive career trajectory too.
You know, I think from the outside looking in, it's easy to see the traps they fall into. And I don't mean just for me, I mean for most people to see. You know, you're drafted at 18 or 19 years of age. You go in on a minimum wage of, you know, getting close to $100,000. Within 3 or 4 years, if you're still on the list, so if you make it to a second contract, you're earning north of $200,000 a year as a 20-year-old who, you know, still is just a kid when it comes to money and life experience and so on. So it's easy to see how the pitfalls happen, and that's why they need really good people around them, not just the official people, but they need good unofficial people around them too.
Well, the other challenge with that too for them as well, Foxy, would be, so probably don't have a lot of overheads, so a lot of excess income and a lot of time. Not a good combination. Traditionally, very constructively,
especially
not
a
great combination when you don't have enough life experience, hence the support around.
Yeah, absolutely right. And, you know, I guess I've seen plenty of it with older people as well, and not in the sporting field, that when their incomes reach such a point of comfort, they find all sorts of bad habits to creep into because a bit of boredom can creep into their life. And so they amuse themselves in ways that really aren't helpful in growing yourself as a person.
What would you have done with 200 grand cash, no overheads at the age of 20, Brad?
Oh, well, you know how much of a big believer I am, Steph, in compound interest. So it would have gone into the bank, line and length for me. That's the way it works.
Yeah, definitely. That's same.
I can tell you it would have been a V8 ute in blue from Ford.
Yeah, or Holland. I wouldn't have been too discerning. Or maybe that Sandman panel van we've discussed.
Yeah. All would have been excellent financial decisions at that time, I'm sure. Now, I think that this actually brings us to a really good point, right? So we're talking about what do you do when you've got money and you don't really know what to do with money. And the case of young blokes, getting good advice. But it's not just for people who are necessarily rolling in cash or, have a lot of income. Financial advice is really something that anyone should be considering, especially with cost of living as it is today. But I think we really need to go back to basics for this one. Can we go through, first of all, what is a financial advisor and how it differs perhaps from an accountant or a mortgage broker, say?
All right, I'm going to put my boring head on for just a moment.
Okay, here we go.
Part of the answer to this lies in that in Australia, we have a lot of rules and regulations to try and make sure that anyone that helps you deal with your money is going to do it in the right way. So there's a number of licensing regimes, and that's the first difference. An accountant is licensed to do certain things. A mortgage broker or a credit broker is licensed to deal with debt, and a financial advisor is licensed to deal in areas of financial advice. So it starts with a licensing regime. But what do they really do? So now let's just make it real. Within each of those professions, there is a range of performance, like in any field, like in footy, like in medicine. You've got someone, they've all got the ticket to do it, but some just do it a lot better than others. So if I just talk about the middle, the average, rather than the best in each field, just the middle, the average, an accountant will help you minimise your tax, and a slightly better than average accountant will have you thinking about the future and not just about what you've already done and doing the ledger and doing your tax returns, things in the past. A mortgage broker, similarly, will look for what's the best way to structure your debt and help you get rid of it, or help you to explore ways to maximise the return from what you're buying with your debt. Financial advisor covers parts of both of those, but really dives into where are you situated, what's now and what do you want later? And then how do we help get you closer to it? And so often people assume it starts with talking about money, and the reality is it shouldn't. We've all got some limitation around the money we've got. But we have no limitations about the dreams we've got, the ambitions we've got, the passions we've got, the things that compete for our attention. So that's where we should actually start in financial advice. And this is where the good to the very good advisors do. They start with, what are you really into? Who are you into? How do you want to spend your time? Then we start talking about, well, let's get some match up in the financial reality.
And tell us more, Foxy, around the importance of trust in that relationship.
Well, all of those relationships should have an element of trust. Trust is a really interesting construct because in a professional space, you're expected to build trust very quickly. The challenge about trust is built through hundreds and thousands of micro interactions over a period of time. So we need to, as professionals, we need to try and build a layer of trust really early by being honest and transparent, but by also not being afraid to have conversations that go beyond the numbers, conversations that actually talk from person to person, because that's how we gel. We're humans, we connect. So for me, Ryan, I think the trust begins in that connection about, are we able to have some real conversations, because then we can talk about the money, which is just math and logic and rules.
And once you've built on that trust relationship, then we talk about, raising the tension. So without trust, you can't raise the tension and get to what's really important.
So when you say the tension, I can imagine some people going, I'm turning up for an argument. Well, what do you really mean?
Oh, in terms of defining or helping people understand what's really important to them.
Yeah. So the tension often, I love a good Venn diagram, 3 circles that have an intersection point between the 3. If you just think for a moment, as a person, you have a bunch of passions and things you're interested in and people you're interested in and dreams and things you want to do. Put that in one. In another one, put your financial reality. You know, what you earn, what you have, what debt you have, what your future prospects look like. But then put the third circle is what are all those trade-offs? And that's what a great financial advisor does, is helps you sort through the trade-offs, which comes from trust. It gets from going below the surface about what's really important to you and what's not. Can I tell you a quick story?
Please.
That's why you're here, Foxy. Tell us a story.
So these are clients of Tribeca, where I sat in as chairman. I sat in with one of our advisors to just, see how we're doing it. It was a great conversation. Two clients, both in their 70s, happily retired, very financially secure, very, very secure. We didn't know, but the wife had been telling the husband she hates the appointments and had actually told the husband to come in and end the relationship with us because she was a psychologist of background and doesn't like numbers. And a lot of the discussions were driven by the husband, who had an engineering background and was all about the numbers, okay? So we get into this meeting and I can see her body language is telling me something that we probably don't want to hear, right? So we raised it and we started having a conversation that was very, very different. The real issue in their life is they had a daughter in 40s who had a long-term illness that was always going to mean she required parental support or some form of support, not just financially, but emotionally and with some living things. So this couple, since they'd retired, had never taken a trip, never gone anywhere. And the reason was because they were carrying this self-imposed guilt that they couldn't be seen to go out and have a good time knowing that the daughter has issues and wouldn't be able to be a part of that. The daughter's feeling guilty. Mum and dad won't leave and go on a trip.
And no one's really having the conversation that needs to be had.
No one. The husband and wife
I just want to really press on this. None of that is about money.
No. Not at all.
That could not be even more further removed from money, actually. That
Correct.
is just clear emotion. That's just human emotion.
Family, friends, holidays, hobbies, experiences.
Yeah. And so that's what we did was we took the conversation, what we call below the line, into the emotional and spiritual stuff for a person. Where's this unrest coming from? And because we had that type of conversation about what's really holding them back from enjoying and making the most of their retirement, well, first of all, A, they kept us as a client. Second, or even before that, the wife said, this has been the best appointment or meeting I've ever had in my life. No one's ever brought up these things because the husband and wife wouldn't talk about them. Engineering husband doesn't want to dive in and reveal his feelings about guilt. So we dealt with it. They booked a trip. They took the trip within the next 3 months. Everyone's happier. Still clients of Tribeca.
I think that's such a funny story funny, tragic, but that what they really actually needed there, again, had nothing to do with their bank account. If you were looking for some sort of show that what you're doing by going to a financial advisor is working out, often you are kind of just like, oh, well, is my bank account was this yesterday? Is it here? What is it today and what is it going to be tomorrow? But you can't. It's hard to measure that. It's hard to put that on a chart.
Exactly right. And that's why Brad talked about what is a good advisor to a great advisor. The advisor that's willing to have the conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah. And without judgment.
Yeah.
Again, why do people not go and see an advisor? I can tell you the first reason that stands out all the time is they say, I don't have enough money. Okay, well, what's right alongside that is this almost guilt. I haven't made the most of my opportunities. I'm a little bit ashamed of where my bank balance is or how much debt I've got. Yes, I know it looks like we're living a fantastic life and we've got everything. Truth is, we're not sure if we're making next month's mortgage payment. So all this perceived sort of fear about not looking enough is why people are scared to see an advisor. So a great advisor parks judgment when it comes to the person and their decisions and their preferences. We exercise judgment when it comes to the numbers, when we're modelling about what could be better or worse, but we shouldn't ever judge the person about the choices they have.
And this is the problem we've got, Steph. We're really passionate. Only 1 out of 10 Australians see an advisor, and we want to get it out there. We want more people to get help.
Let's talk about that, actually. Do we think that financial advisors have a bad reputation in Australia?
It's interesting. Maybe we should ask you that question, Steph, because we come from the profession. What do you think?
Just from my gut, I'd probably say yes. Mm-hmm. I think that in a world where information is so readily available, it's hard to calculate the value of things. And I would say probably your average person with an average salary would struggle to see the value in it.
I agree for what it's worth. I think we've got a reputation problem, and I think we're perceived, Foxy, that we are only for the rich, in inverted commas.
Yeah, that's the perception. Wow, where to start with this? Do we have a bad reputation? Well, there is research done on this every couple of years, and the financial advice profession, interesting, because the people that write these stories are media, and we've always ranked higher than media as having more trust.
I was about to say, you want a bad reputation as a journalist. I think we're below used car salesmen at the moment, so there we go.
But over the last 5 years, so since the Royal Commission into Financial Advice took place, the reputation has rebounded, and there's lots of reasons for that. A study from the Financial Planning Association of clients of financial advisors, 95% trust their financial advisor, 97% that see a certified financial professional, which is a designation some advisors have, and most of the advisors at Tribeca have a 97% trust rating from their clients. I mean, it's pretty incredible. This is a really important part of financial advice, is that when we think of how we increase the number of people getting the benefits of advice, we're going to make that growth bit by bit by people having a good experience and sharing it with others.
Exactly, yeah.
And in the meantime, of course, we know human nature, bad news spreads a lot faster than good news. You get a bad experience at the shop, you go and tell 10 people. Get a good experience, maybe you tell one. And, of course, now we can explode that because we're going to post it on the Facebook group or the blog or whatever else, right? So we've got to win ground bit by bit, and that's okay. Again, part of what a great financial advisor can do is help you be able to help some of your friends by helping you frame the experience you've had. What's it like? Where did you start? What are you actually doing different? And what's it going to create, and how long will it take?
Yeah. And I think that, again, the other thing, going back to your anecdote earlier, is that it's hard to sometimes quantify what are lifestyle changes that make your life better, but don't necessarily, it's not something you can include on an annual report, say. Maybe on paper you're making the same amount of money or you're balanced, but your life has improved considerably because you've had a conversation about what you actually want.
Well, this is the whole concept of financial well-being that, we're so into. We say live your good life. What's your good life? Well, you mightn't be able to change how much income you're getting. Maybe you can with a bit of coaching. But maybe you're stuck with the income, but are you getting the most out of your life from that? Maybe not. Sometimes you need a top-up conversation, or you need to be able to know where do you go to get that little bit of impetus to go, stock take time, I need to just catch my breath and refocus here. And again, that's what advice can bring you, is the coach to help do that. After
the Royal Commission, a lot of advisors left the industry. Is that correct?
Up to 40%, Foxy,
yeah,
about 12, 13,000.
When you have fewer financial advisors, there's a little bit of a shortage in the industry. You have this problem where people in a cost of living crisis, everyone's going to wondering how they're going to get through the months, make rent, buy their groceries. Inflation is hard. That means that they're turning, I think, increasingly to social media. And I reckon that's a bit of a problem sometimes because we're not always we don't see people's accreditation on social media. You can be compelling, but you might not be right. Have you seen this as a bit of a new issue popping up?
Absolutely. When we talk about people facing cost of living crisis and finding it tough, and we're not just talking about people earning the average wage of about $80,000, right? This applies equally to the household that might have $400,000 of income because they put their lifestyle into a position where they need every dollar, and then interest rates went up. Now they need more than every dollar to meet their own needs. So this is right across. It's irrelevant of what people earn. They're facing the same sorts of challenges. So if you think you have got some sort of issue, like if you've got a health issue, what do people do? Where do people start if they think they have a health issue?
Straight to Google.
Straight to Dr. Google. My wife is actually the handyman of our house.
Yeah.
Right? She fixes everything. And how does she do it? She goes onto Google, finds a YouTube video or whatever about it, buys the stuff at Bunnings, goes home, stuffs it up the first time, gets it done the second time. Right? She just trial and errors it. So people with a financial issue, what are they going to do? They're going to start with Google. Right? They're going to listen to people that may not have any qualifications. They aren't licensed in most cases to actually provide advice. And any advice they give could only be general advice and not specific to you. But that doesn't mean people shouldn't go and Google things about their money. They should, because you're gathering information. The skill we all need to face is how do you disseminate the information to sort the wheat from the chaff, which applies to me, which doesn't. That's an American. Hang on, their tax rules are completely different. That doesn't apply to me.
Yep.
And eventually what they should do is decide whether they meet an advisor, find one that matches where they're at, right? So like buying a pair of shoes, you want to find the shoes that fit. You should find an advisor.
And we are, in the last couple of years, Steph and Fox, we've seen a lot more of this where we might have a prospective client approach us and they are interviewing up to 3 advisors. We actually had a client from Singapore re-immigrating to Australia and he interviewed, his words, 8 to 10 advisors.
Who has the time?
Yeah, that's a...
I'm impressed by that.
Well, very happy to say he chose Tribeca as well.
Oh, well done. Well done. There you go.
and so, you know, like when people need to see a surgeon, they often get a referral from one place to another. So accountants or lawyers might refer people to us. It puts us at the top of the queue. We do a great job. People choose us straight away. If they're not sure, they will get a second opinion. That's okay, like you would with a surgeon. But starting with Dr. Google's all right. Just don't take action off the back of Dr. Google.
Yeah.
Just know the question. Find what are the questions I should be asking an expert that can tell me if it applies to me.
Now, I mentioned at the beginning the cost of inaction. I think we should probably come back to that because it can actually have a material cost. What could someone stand to lose if they're not getting financial advice? And we're not talking again, I think we need to make this clear, about the richest of the rich. And we're talking about everybody from middle income, low income, high income, if you just sort of ignore your money.
Yeah, so the way that we break it down at Tribeca, we break it down into there's the qualitative element if you don't do anything, and then there's a quantitative element as well. And there's, Brad talked to research earlier, there's independent research out there that gets renewed each year, and at the moment it's about 5.9% of your investable funds. That's the cost of inaction or not engaging a trusted advisor. So for every 100,000 that you might have to invest, that's soon going to add up over time. If you had $1 million to invest, it'd be around the $60,000 mark. So it really adds up as well. Per year. Exactly right. And then we know, Steph, when you compound that, it soon adds up.
God, you guys love compound interest.
It does.
It's
like a challenge. I always have to get the word.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, if we did a shot every time you said compound, we wouldn't be walking out of here.
And it does remind me of a client that's recently engaged with Tribeca as well. He came in with his wife. He runs the family self-managed super fund. Over the last 12 months, he'd had a return on money of about 4%. Now, we don't want to talk too general, but a balanced or a growth index funds returned 15 to 19% in the last 12 months. He actually said to us off the record once his kids who were in the appointment and part of the self-managed, the guilt that he carried about that lack of performance in that investment. So it's very real and very tangible where people maybe want too much control, don't seek the right type of advice, and it can really cost you. That's just a recent story from Tribeca.
If I put a bit of colour on that research Ryan mentioned, one of what drives nearly half of that additional return is helping clients to not make the classic mistakes with their money. So getting scared of markets, selling when prices are low, then waiting for them to recover before they buy back in. So when do they buy back in? When the market's near the top instead of the bottom.
And if we work that practically, Foxy, if someone had $500,000 invested and the market went down 20%, they're then at 400,000. They realise that loss and put it into something more conservative for them to potentially never make up that loss again.
Correct. Steph, let me give you 2 client stories, of course, no names.
Yeah.
And this is not about the financial cost necessarily, but the other cost, the emotional cost of not dealing with your money. So a couple came in to see me years ago and she was a nurse. She was 61 years old. Husband's a truck driver, 63 years old. He just loves driving trucks. He has no interest in retiring. In fact, he didn't even want to come to the appointment. She's 61. She's a nurse. She is sick to death of cleaning up after people and wiping. Right? She's over it. She's worn out. Caring, empathy, exhausted. They got sent to me by their accountant and I said, why are you here? And she said, I want to know when I can retire. I've had enough of work. So we found information, gathered all the bits. I said, I want you to come back 10 days' time and I'll have an answer for you. She came back in 10 days' time. I said, good news or bad news? Which do you want? She said, give me the bad news. I said, all right, well, the bad news is I wish you'd seen me about 2.5 years ago because that's when you were financially in a position to have retired. The good news is you can resign this afternoon.
Oh, she must have been climbing up the walls.
Yeah, and then she got a little bit nervous about the idea of not having to go to work. So we talked about a transitioning to make it happen. But the reality is 2.5 more years of wiping bums and cleaning up and all the stuff she'd been over for 5 or 6 years that had dragged the quality of her life down. She didn't have to have that.
And 2.5 years of your life.
It's a good chunk.
It's a good chunk. And to, maybe find another passion, like find out she wanted to be a painter for a bit or pursue something new and different.
Or look after her 3 grandkids 2 days a week.
Especially when you've lost your passion for what you do, it feels like 10.
100%. And then one other just real quick story. A couple, he was a pilot for one of the big commercial airlines. She was a part-time calisthenics teacher. Household income, $220,000 a year before tax. And this is 10 years ago. Weren't saving a cent, weren't getting ahead. They came to see me because friends of theirs, also pilots, referred them. They said, we're just not getting anywhere. We're just on the treadmill. We're just pedaling so hard, we can't get anywhere. So we talked about what's important to them. We talked about where the money's leaking out of their life. And we did put in a framework to try and capture something as a way forward and take out some of the places that, in their words, they were wasting money. 6 months into working together, they had saved $18,000 in cash.
Wow. Yeah.
Which they then took $2,000 for a little driving holiday with the kids to a beach house and $16,000 off their mortgage, brought down the duration of their mortgage by about 3 years in 6 months because they stopped, paused, did a little bit of self-work and prioritised what was more important to them.
And this is the thing, like I think we humans are so good at avoiding discomfort, aren't we? And like a uncomfortable conversation about money, because for a lot of people it will be uncomfortable because you are, as you said, discussing things that bring up guilt and shame. And it's like not going for a run when you know that once you do the run, you're going to feel really good. But first, you have to run.
So there's a study on that?
Yeah.
There's a study on that. It's called the 3 minute.
Yep.
So once you can get someone to start the workout, you put them in a class and so you can drop out whenever you like. Once they pass the 3 minute mark, the dropout rate is less than 1% because they've started. And it's the same with looking after your finances, your money, your health. You just got to take the first step. You've got to be brave enough to go, okay, I'm going to have a crack. I'm going to just start. What's my smallest win? And chase that.
And this is where I think financial advice, Foxy's got a lot to answer for because I think we the profession falls in the trap talking about what it is as opposed to what it does.
Yeah.
Like what you're telling there is that you could reduce someone's work life if they wanted or the mortgage. It's painting the picture, so therefore self-interest, and they want to create the change. It's safe to talk about what it is, super and in returns, but what's it going to do? And that's what's really important to people and creates the change, right?
Absolutely right. I mean, how many times do you get someone that thinks they're in a high-powered executive leadership role, male or female, doesn't matter. They're in this high-powered role. They're sacrificing everything around their lifestyle to earn the big bucks, sometimes when they don't need to. They chase the next promotion, another 5 hours away, another 15 nights a year away from family, but it doesn't actually improve the quality of their life. They get caught up chasing a false god, a false target, a false goal.
And without judgment, Steph, my bet would be more than half of the people that are doing that probably overspend to compensate for the things that they're not happy in. So the money's actually not there at the end of the day anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you get a job which pays you a lot of money, so you move to a nice suburb and then you can never enjoy the suburb and you may as well be out in the sticks with more time. And
living out in the sticks, I can tell you, the guys I catch up with one night a week to have a beer, we call it the Fish Bar because it's the surname.
I was hoping you were going to do a shout out.
Well, so the guys at the Fish Bar, all sorts of occupations. There is a mortgage broker, there's a train driver, there's a fireman, there's a builder. So you get the idea, right? Diverse. And we catch up once a week. We knock off a couple of beers in 90 minutes and we solve each other's problems or cause each other problems by taking the mickey out of each other. But what it is a place to kind of be real and sometimes we talk about difficult things and sometimes we don't, but it's just so important to have those spaces so you can make these changes.
Yeah, perfect. And sometimes you don't have to live in the nice suburbs. Like go live out in the sticks and have more life to enjoy.
I tell you, they've all got
have
caravans, boats, motorbikes,
yeah, exactly. And they
trips
can
overseas.
Go take the caravan to a nice beach somewhere and have the place to yourself and spend more time doing that because you're not tied to an office. And I think that's such a worthy way of living that you do kind of miss if you're not paying attention. You fall into the tar pit of just getting more work, more jobs, higher positions.
And as we keep saying, it's not judgment. But did anyone give you the space to just pause and decide which path you wanted? Or are you just on it?
Brad, there's just so much to think about there. I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. And if you do want more advice, then do make sure you follow this podcast so you never miss an episode. And we'll be back very soon. Advice given in this podcast is general in nature and not intended to influence decisions about investing or financial products. Our listeners should always seek their own professional advice that considers their own personal circumstances before making any financial decisions.